It's Saturday, March 17th, 2018. I'm going to try to get through these things pretty quick because I only got 15 minutes and I got 10 things, and that's a little bit less than a minute. And I want to do a quick shout out to NASCAR Lover 2018. He recently subscribed to the channel. He does some, I think he does some stuff on NASCAR Heat 2. I think I saw some Fortnite on there, Project Cars 2. He might even be starting an online racing league with NASCAR Heat 2, so that's pretty cool. Good guy. Go check him out. Go subscribe to his channel, NASCAR Lover 2018. Recently passed 100 subs, so that's pretty awesome. Especially when you only got a few like I do. It's like, I don't know if I can really send anybody to him, but hey, if you're a subscriber of mine and you want to go check him out, I advise you to go do it. Thank you to NASCAR Lover 2018. I appreciate the subscription. Okay, so as you've seen from the tagline, we need to help NASCAR. They recently lost Lowe's as a sponsor. And I know it's more, well, Jimmy Johnson lost Lowe's. No, NASCAR lost Lowe's, not just Jimmy Johnson. Lowe's feels like spending their marketing dollars on NASCAR isn't worth it. And that's a big blow for NASCAR. So we kind of, in the 90s, these guys were at their peak. I mean, they were being considered even bigger than hockey, which means they had kind of made it into the Big Four. Because for a long time in the United States, the Big Four was basically football, baseball, basketball, and then hockey. Well, NASCAR, I think, had pushed past them. Now, I think they're the biggest spectator sport in America, in North America. But they're falling on hard times. Ratings are slipping. Attendance is flat at the racetracks. But, of course, if you fill them up, I don't see how you make attendance go up. If you only have 80,000 seats and you fill 80,000 seats, you can't go up unless you build more seats. I'd like to see a build more seats at Bristol. It's like they've already turned that thing into a giant coliseum. I don't think you can make it any bigger. So these are going to be the 10 things I think can help NASCAR in the future. And believe, this is just my list. This is one guy. This is only my brain. Nobody else has helped me with this. So if any of this stuff sounds stupid to you, put it down in the comments. If any of it sounds good, let me know. If you have better ideas, put it down in the comments. Because, if you're watching this, you're a NASCAR fan, and we want to see NASCAR succeed. So this is going to be NASCAR as a whole, not just the Monster Energy series or Xfinity or the trucks. This is NASCAR as a whole, because if NASCAR as a whole gets bigger and gets more exposure and better, that's good for all of us. So at number 10, this is the big one, cut costs. Cars are too expensive to run. I think it's $20 million per race team. We need to knock it back by half. I think back in the 80s, it only used to cost like $2 or $3 million per race team. Now, in today's money, I think that's close to 14 or 15 million. But we need to cut costs. Even if you only cut $5 million out of the budget and drop it down to 15 million, that's still a big help. But I think you need to take a drastic cut. You need to cut this thing in half, 10 million. And as we go, I'm going to come up with some ways that we can cut costs. So one of the ways to cut costs is the number 9 reason. Shorten the races. Let's face it, there's always that giant, big, dead zone in the middle of the race where nobody's really doing anything. And I know NASCAR has went to a system of kind of doing these little sprint races where you get 10 bonus points at the end of a certain amount of laps. But let's just do a thing where instead of being 500-mile races, let's shorten them down to 300-mile races. Because the races are taking too long. There's just that big dead zone right in the middle where nobody's really paying much attention. Even I am more interested in what's happening at the beginning and what's happening at the end than the big dead spot in the middle where I know that guy that's leading right now may not be the same guy leading at the end. So let's shorten the races. And instead of 2 segments that are sprint races, you have one that's at the halfway point, race for that, get your 10 bonus points. So you'll still have that in there. Shortening races can also result in fewer pit stops. Fewer pit stops means fewer tires. So fewer tires, you already are cutting costs on the tires. Tires are expensive. We all know tires are expensive. So cutting costs is a big deal, and fewer pit stops and less time. It also will save on what can go wrong with the car. You have 200 less laps, then that's fewer chances for you to wreck the car, fewer chances for you to fewer chances for you to break anything in the motor or underneath the car, so less it costs to run a car. Keep Daytona 500 miles, keep the Coca-Cola 600. Keep those two races because one of them is tradition and the other one is the Coca-Cola 600. You got to keep the 600, and that'll be the one time to really test. You know, it's like, yeah, you've been running 300 miles mostly. Now let's see what you can do with a 600-mile race. Yeah. Okay, so number 8, innovation. Now, the reason I say innovation, these cars have been flat for years. Other than safety features, you can't really put roll cages in the cars. Innovation is more for the car makers, like Toyota, Chevy, and Ford. They look in these racing. That's why you call it TRD TRD, Toyota Racing Development. They're trying to develop technologies for their road cars. Same with Formula One. Same with IndyCar. All these people are looking to develop technologies for their road cars to make them better and do it through racing. It's been done for years. NASCAR's flat. The only innovations they've made is in safety, and they've made great innovations in safety. But with the 8-cylinder motors that they've been running for years, and they're very mechanical, they're not really technology based, they're very mechanical and kept simple, there's not a lot of room to innovate. So these brands don't come into NASCAR thinking they can gain anything. Toyota, when it came in, I'm sure it just wanted to develop its 8-cylinder motor because they had 6s and they had 4s, and they did have some 8s, but this was a chance to develop the 8-cylinder motor. Well, now you can't offer that to them. Once they probably develop their 8-cylinder motor as far as they can, what's left for Toyota to stay? I can see Ford and Chevy in the long term sticking around in NASCAR because it's tradition. But Toyota could leave because they are not, they are not a NASCAR original. Back in the 80s, we used to have Chevy, Ford, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick. We had 5 car makes. Now, granted, 4 of them were GM. But at one time, we had 5 car makes that were going in racing. We don't have that anymore. We have 3. We could lose Toyota if we don't give them a chance to innovate. So how do you innovate? 6-cylinder motors or 4-cylinder turbos? I know, I can hear the groans already from NASCAR fans. But with the way the world is going, everybody is going towards smaller engines and kind of turbocharging these things. You only get the power when you need it, and everything else driving around the city, you don't need 600 horsepower when you're in traffic. You need 600 horsepower when you're racing, but you shouldn't be doing that on the street, or when you're getting onto the highway, it's nice to have the extra boost. Well, that's what turbos are for. They'll give you the boost when you need it. So letting these teams develop a 6-cylinder or 4-cylinder motor so that they can develop their turbo technology with the smaller engines might bring in some other car makes. Maybe Honda comes in. Maybe you can get Dodge to come back. Maybe you can get, just other car makes to join the party and build up a little bit, build it up a little bit more. 4-cylinder turbos would be really cool. Now, I know 8-cylinder motors are the norm in NASCAR, but we've got to think forward. 8 cylinders have been there. There's not a lot of innovation. There's not a lot of ways to innovate in NASCAR with the 8-cylinder motor anymore. So we might need to back it down. Smaller motors also could mean cheaper on materials. I'm just saying. Number 7, let the driver shine. The drivers now are so buttoned up in corporate, they're boring. Most of them are boring. When Brad Keselowski or Kyle Busch even mouths off one little thing, we think it's controversial. Well, a lot of what they say really isn't all that controversial. It is for us now, but it wouldn't have been back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It would have just been drivers voicing their opinions. But now corporate takes over and says, you can't say that because you're hurting our brand. We need to let the driver shine, and the sponsors need to understand the drivers need to shine. More exposure towards your brand helps your brand sell. Number 6, fewer drivers. We need to get rid of how many drivers are in these races. We don't need 40. Let's face it, the last 10 guys on the grid, nobody cares about. Do I really still care that every once in a while we throw out some of these last 10 drivers? I can't even think of one real quick off the top of my head. The big stars are what drive it. We don't need those last 10 guys that aren't really doing much for us anyway. They're J.J. Yaley, is he still racing? I don't know, because he's in the back if he is still racing. I know that there are guys out there we really don't. Do we really need Jeffrey Earnhardt? Yeah, he's got the Earnhardt name, but he's not doing anything. He's just another car driving around. He has Doesn't have the talent of Dale Earnhardt Jr., definitely does not have the talent of Earnhardt Sr., which leads me to number 5. Fewer races. We don't need 36 races. Let's drop it back to 30. 30 races makes it a little bit easier on these teams. Once again, it cuts costs. You don't have to have as many cars. You bring the cost down because now you have fewer chances to ruin these cars, fewer times you have to have all these people travel. Let's get rid of some of these races. We don't need to get rid of some of those mile-and-a-halfers. Way too many mile-and-a-halfers. So let's cut back on those. You still have to have a Martinsville. Keep your Bristols, keep your Daytonas, keep your Talladegas. But do we really need California, Texas, Kansas, some of these places to have 2 races? No, we don't. Those ovals are not necessary. Keep your 2 road courses because they're fun. But let's cut back on some of these races. It cuts back on costs as well. And with fewer drivers, we'll go back up just real quick. Fewer drivers means the money pool, if you only have 30 racers out there, the money pool goes further to the teams that are there. Which leads me to number 4. 2 cars per team. None of this 4, none of this 3, 2. If you have to go for a few years where you only have 26 cars on the field because you can only find 13 car owners, fine. Build it back up, and then you can have your 15 teams with 2 each. And then if the sport manages to keep building and getting more popular, up the teams, up it to 32, up it to 34 per, as long as you have the money to take care of everybody involved. But 2 cars per team. No reason to have 4-car teams. 2 cars per team. And everybody has to have 2. No 1-car teams, everybody has 2. I'm sorry, front row. Or furniture row. Front row, I think, has 3. Number 3, dump the trucks. Replace them with something everybody drives. SUVs. I love a pickup truck. I love a pickup. But most people are driving SUVs right now. So how awesome would it be if most of these people that are driving around SUVs get to see their vehicle out there? A Ford Escape, the Chevy Equinox, Toyota RAV4s. Maybe you can get Honda to come in with a CR-V, Hyundai to come in with a Tucson. But you have SUVs. They all recognize them. Bang it out, man, and have 6-cylinder motors, not 8 6-cylinders or 4-cylinder turbos, which some of these SUVs have. But then it makes it more identifiable with most of America now driving these things. More people now are buying SUVs and pickups. The Ford F-Series is still the most popular vehicle in America. But when you buy a pickup, you're going Ford the Ford F-Series. But SUVs, a lot of people buying them. Let's get them involved. And we might bring in some new car brands, new car makes. 2, this one's going to get a lot of heat. Electric Car League. This also goes back to innovation. This lets the car makes innovate with a stock-looking vehicle. They can innovate some of their electric technology by putting it on the race course. Faster electric cars means faster road cars that are electric. Maybe can develop a longer battery life for the car. It works out in the long run. I know they make no noise. The Formula E series sucks. But I think because they look like Formula cars, so who cares? But real cars out there, you might convince Elon Musk and Tesla. The Tesla Model S going against the Toyota Camry and or the Chevy Volt or whatever. But you have electric cars, not the Prius. I'm not putting the Prius in any racing league. If they do it, I'll ban NASCAR. But there you go. Electric league, just to allow the car makes to innovate, and you can bring in maybe more car brands who might sit there and say, we'd like to work on our electric technology, and we can do it over here in NASCAR. Start it small, make it bigger eventually. But maybe it can work. And the younger generation, they may appreciate an electric car more because that's the cars they're growing up on. And number 1, new tech for sponsors. Take better care of your sponsors. If the sponsor of a race team is out there and their car isn't being featured on the broadcast because you're following around Furniture Row or you're following around, Pennzoil, make sure that some of these other sponsors still have a presence on the race broadcast. Put up the names in graphics on the track somewhere so that even if the car isn't being featured, the sponsor still is. Take better care of your sponsors. So to the troops, past, present, and future, thanks for the freedom.